being eternal self in this lifetime instead of human self with goals and desires and plans. You've all heard the saying, I had plans and God laughed, or the saying goes something like that. I made a bunch of plans and God laughed his head off. Her head off, its head off. Well, that's what eternal self thinks of your human plans. So, what you gonna do about that? What is gonna change? What has to change? Every single one of you here with me on this teleconference, you have already decided you want to change. You want to make the change. There are many others too, of course. It's a mass consciousness wave of change. This is spreading across the world in ways it has never spread before. It might be because the communication channels are open in such a way that they never have been before. Where humanity can share ideas with each other in ways they never could before. So what's gonna give? What are you gonna give up? What are you gonna give up as a human? What are you gonna change as a human in order to facilitate this radical change in how you're going to live your life? This is radical. This is something not many people have done. Being immortal self, eternal self, living in this physical world. This is a tall order. It's not a small change in the way you do things, the way you see things, the way you live your life. This is a whole new you. This is a whole different you. The true you is finally going to come through and live this physical lifetime. So just look at your life right now and ask yourself, what needs to change? How do I not support the life and goals and desires and beingness of eternal self? How do I not support that? Maybe you smoke a little too much. Maybe you eat a little too much. Maybe you drink a little too much, or maybe you might have a little too much sex. What is your addiction? That's a good place to start. Look at your human condition addictions first. Do those serve your lifetime as eternal being, immortal self, incarnate in this amazing dream in God's consciousness? Oh, here's another addiction that a lot of people are guilty of. Oh, too much TV, or even too much computer nowadays. Maybe too much YouTube. What are your addictions? Even if you say to yourself, and this is a justification I had made at one point, which was, well, I watch nature shows and galaxies shows and things that I learn from. I don't watch junk TV. But still, if you watch too much of even the nature shows and Discovery Channel and History Channel, Weather Channel, there's some Weather Channel addicts out there. I know a couple. Does this serve eternal being? Everything you do, ask yourself, does this support immortal being, immortal self, eternal self, in this physical form, in this body that I'm wearing for a lifetime? Just take a deep breath. Just let those things go. They were coping mechanisms for a distraught human. I am sure every single one of us, oh yes, every single one of us has an addiction of some sort. That's a coping mechanism in the human condition that does not serve our desire now to live as eternal being in a finite, crazy world, being the source of sanity and love here in this place that needs so much of both sanity and love. Just let those go now. You're graduating from human 1.0 and you're moving into human 2.0 now. You don't need those things anymore. You are free. You are free. Okay, so we've looked at the addictions. Now let's look at we've looked at what needs to be taken away in order to support eternal being on this planet. But now let's look at what needs to be added. This is all pretty practical level stuff. This isn't rocket science. This is practical level stuff. What do you need to add to your life in order to support your desire to live as eternal being, immortal self, the consciousness of godself on this planet, in this body that you have? Just close your eyes and think about it for a moment. What is missing from your life? Should you meditate more? Should you exercise or do some yoga? Do you need to change your friends? Yes, sometimes that is exactly what the doctor ordered. Sometimes we have unhealthy relationships that are immersed in human conditioned patterning. So ask yourself, And you might want to do this later and just sit down and go through your phone book and look at every friend that you have. And ask yourself, is this person healthy to have in my life? Is this person healthy to be close to me? Maybe you might want to still keep a connection with this person, but maybe you might have to push them out to the further edges a little bit. And keep them at arm's length, especially if they're abusive toward you, or betray your trust, or somehow commit infractions against you, or disrespect you. Ask yourself, would God keep this person around as a friend? Sometimes that's a tough question to answer. You have to make a difference between people who are your friends and people who you're trying to help. Some of your friends are your personal rescue cases, but you're calling them friends instead of someone who you're helping. Be careful with that division. There is a line there, and create some unhealthy situations. Look out for the savior complex. Savior complex is a tough one. It masquerades as a friendship sometimes. So, what else should you add to your life? All right, we discussed healthier friendships, possibly right fellowship, it's called. There's 8 right things in the Buddhist way, and one of them is right fellowship. Maybe you should go out to some meditation circles in your town. Maybe you should go to the New Age singles mixers if you're all by yourself and start meeting people. Sometimes, even if you don't need instructions, sometimes it's nice to just go to those retreats or go to those meditation circles or those kirtans or mantra chant sessions, just so that you can create right fellowship in your life. And if you're in a place where there's just nothing of that sort going on, you can find community on the internet. It's a fortunate thing these days. It's made the world a lot smaller. You can establish friendships around the world now. And you never know who these people are in these forums or social clubs. Sometimes there's very famous people actually masquerading as Joe Smith. Because they're dying for right fellowship, and if anybody knows who they are, they can't have a real conversation with people. Right livelihood is another aspect that you might want to change about your life. If you're not doing a job that serves you as eternal being, immortal self. For instance, I had a friend who, when he started awakening and began to get very conscious with the with his spiritual path, he realized he had to leave his job. Because guess what he did? He made warplanes for the military, for private organizations that use that sort of thing. He was making like $100 an hour. But he realized his conscience could not continue to make machines that kill people and still be in an awakening state. This does not serve eternal self. This does not support your experience of being eternal self, God's self, in the physical form on this earth. Literally, you are becoming an angel on earth in the flesh. You are becoming the source of love in the flesh to the world. You are becoming God in the flesh, in the world. Well, let me rephrase that. You were already God in the flesh, but you're becoming aware that you are God in the flesh, in the world. God is your consciousness. You are the expression of that consciousness. So really look at what it is you do for a living. And make sure that is aligned with eternal self. Do you work in a slaughterhouse? Do you work for a company that uses child slave labor in China to make its products? Follow the money. Look at where it all goes and where it comes from for this business you work for. Make sure you are not doing harm. It's hard not to buy a telephone or a toaster or a blender that's not made by child slave labor in China and other places like this. It's hard to actually do anything but sit in the woods with a fig leaf without harming people. Even your computer was probably made by somebody who's very disadvantaged. Almost everything, all the manufacturing jobs are farmed out to cheap labor kinds of countries where the people are in poverty and taken advantage of. Their chi literally being stolen. So even while you can only do so much about all of that, you're still going to have a computer I still have to have a computer in order to do the work I do. But you have to look at this business you work for and ask yourself if they are doing the best that they possibly can to be harmless in the world. Right livelihood is so important to supporting your experience of being eternal self in the finite, in the flesh, an angel in this world. Everything you do affects others. Everything. There is nothing that doesn't affect others that you do. Even if you don't do anything, you're affecting others. That's the paradox. Omission of action creates karma just as much as action does. So do your best to be harmless in the world. Everything that you can do. To be free of doing harm on this planet to others. It's simple. Now, here's another thing that comes up for a lot of people who are just beginning their experience of being eternal self in the flesh, being God's consciousness in this world, awake and aware of who you are. That is it okay to do this? What if people don't like me? What if my family thinks I'm crazy? What if somebody gossips about me? What if I don't meet expectations anymore? Because I don't do things that I used to do for everybody when I let them take advantage of my human conditioning patterns. Well, the answer is be okay with it. People are going to notice you changed. And some are going to like it, and some won't. I mean, you could be the most perfect person on the whole planet. You could be the sweetest, the gentlest, the most smartest, the smartest. You could be the most talented. You could be the most brilliant, the most beautiful, the most anything. And still there's going to be people who just hate you for no reason. You should see some of the troll comments people put on some of these videos talking about love. You have to get to the point where you just don't take any of this seriously. Any of it. If someone doesn't like you, their loss. Really. You have to not be fazed by any of that anymore. If people expect you to be a certain way, forget it. Eternal self does not cater to what society expects you to be like. Yeah, sure, you're responsible for your children. Don't think I'm giving you an excuse out of that. Yeah, you're responsible for paying your rent and your bills. And yes, you must give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. But you don't have to be any kind of personality that someone else wants you to be. You don't have to say things that people wish you would say or not say. You don't have to believe the way other people think that you should believe. You don't have to be any way but how you want to be. And just accept it that some people aren't going to like you. Water off a duck's back. What else can you do? You could try changing and pleasing everyone. You could change for this person and change for that person and change this way and that way for the other person. And then next thing you know, you're all messed up. Just be who you are. Free. No obstacles. No compromises. I'm not saying you don't have to compromise in certain situations and in certain relationships. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the nature of your being, the personality that you are. Sure, your personality's not going to be perfect. Your personality's got some damage. Sure, the human personality is never going to be perfect. Well, maybe in 400 generations, I don't know. But the point is that you have to just be. who you are, whether anybody likes it or not, whether anybody thinks you're crazy or not, whether anybody thinks you're doing what you're supposed to do or not. That's all there is to it. So many people are so hung up on having everybody like them. I tried that for years. Oh, what suffering. Finally, I'm like, oh, whatever. There's 6.8 billion people in the world. There's bound to be enough that like me that I'll be happy enough. Same for you. Forget this thing about people not liking you. Who cares? Let them move on. They'll go do their thing and find somebody they like. And you'll have plenty coming toward you who do like you. So just focus on the 200 people who like you instead of the 1 or 2 people who don't. That was another trap I fell into so many times. There's all these people over here who like me and all this stuff, but there's that 1 or 2 person who didn't, and that was what I focused on. What's suffering? When I just should have just said, like, whatever. Go off on your little trip and have a good time. I'm going to hang out over here where it's fun with all these people who like me. So this is how you need to look at your life and how to be who you are despite all the requirements that other people might have of you. It's all just projection. Don't buy into the illusions of projection. Just relax and be. Flaws and all. Flaws and all. Another thing that might come up is that you literally have to accept the consequences for changing. Like we were talking about earlier, if you're not going to live your life as the human conditioned self anymore, and you're going to live your life as eternal self, God self, in the flesh, an angel here on this planet, things are going to change. Things have to change. And you will change. And people will notice that. People around you will notice that. You might have to eliminate some friends who aren't healthy for you. And you might have to adopt new ones who are. Things are going to change. You might have to let go of the job that isn't harmless on this planet, that harms other people. So there's an accepting of the consequences, of letting go of the human life, the human plans, the human